The first time humanity saw the Velhari, they did not come in warships. They came in silence, a single silver vessel, no larger than a city block, descending through the clouds above Geneva like a falling leaf. No sonic boom, no fire. Just a long, breathless hush that swept across every nation on Earth as the ship settled into the meadow outside the United Nations headquarters and simply waited. For 6 days it waited. Governments argued, military generals paced their war rooms, scientists pressed their faces against telescopes and drones, cataloguing every curve of the hull. Theologians gave sermons, children drew pictures, the world held its breath. On the 7th day, a door appeared where there had been no door, and she walked out. She stood roughly 8 feet tall, her body slender and luminous, wrapped in something between cloth and light. Her skin was the color of deep ocean water, a shifting, living blue, and her eyes were silver, without pupil or iris, like 2 mirrors catching the morning sun. Her hair, if it could be called that, floated behind her in slow motion, as though she existed in a gentler gravity than the rest of the world. Around her neck hung a pendant of translucent crystal that pulsed with a soft rhythmic glow. Like a second heartbeat, visible to everyone watching, the diplomatic team that greeted her was made up of 43 ambassadors, 12 scientists, 8 translators, and 1 exhausted junior aide named Marcus Hale, who had been awake for 31 hours, and was holding a tablet he kept forgetting to look at. The alien princess, for that is what the translators would eventually determine her title to be, raised one long blue hand in a gesture that every human present somehow understood as greeting, not because of technology, not because of translation, but because some gestures are older than language. Her name, rendered as closely as human vocal cords could manage, was Syvari Vel, Princess of the Velhari Continuance, daughter of the High Resonance, and the first of her kind to set foot on a world outside their own star system in over 200 years. She had come, she explained, through a crystalline translation device built into her pendant, not to conquer, not to negotiate, not even to observe. She had come to warn them. In the weeks that followed, Syvari became the most studied, most photographed, and most argued about being in human history. She was housed in a specially constructed suite within the UN complex. The atmosphere adjusted to accommodate both her biology and theirs. And every day she met with delegations from different nations, scientists from every discipline, philosophers, children, artists and engineers. She was patient with all of them. Endlessly, almost painfully patient. Marcus Hale, the junior aide, kept finding himself assigned to her detail. He suspected it was because he was low-ranking enough that no one important wanted the job, and because he was the only member of the diplomatic staff who had not, at some point, said something offensive in her presence. He had managed this largely by saying very little at all, and mostly by listening, which was, it turned out, exactly what Syvari valued most in a human companion. "You are different from the ones who speak first," she told him one evening as they stood on the balcony of her suite watching the sunset. Her pendant glowed warm amber in the fading light. "I'm usually the one taking notes," Marcus said. "Hard to take notes and talk at the same time." She considered this for a long moment. "On my world, those who listen are given the highest seats. On yours, I think it is the opposite." He couldn't argue with that. Slowly, carefully, Syvari began to share what she had come to say. The warning was not about an invasion. It was not about a cosmic disaster or a dying star. The danger she described was quieter, and in many ways more frightening. There was a faction within the interstellar community. Dozens of civilizations scattered across the galaxy, operating under a loose council, who had been watching Earth for centuries. Most of them were curious, a few were cautious, but a small powerful coalition called the Reth Conclave had decided, after generations of debate, that humanity was not ready for contact, not ready for the stars, and not ready to be allowed to continue developing at its current rate. They believed that within 200 years, humans would either transcend or destroy. And they were not willing to wait to find out which. The conclave had sent Syvari as a courtesy, A final diplomatic gesture before they implemented what they called the Stillness Protocol. A silence. A quarantine so complete that humanity would be cut off from any possibility of interstellar communication, exploration, or contact for the next 1,000 years, possibly forever. Syvari had come not because she agreed with the conclave, she had come because she didn't. They sent me to observe you one final time, she said, to confirm their decision. But I believe they are wrong. I believe you are not what they think you are. She had 30 days to submit her report, and the conclave had eyes everywhere, including, Marcus would come to learn, inside the UN complex itself. It started with small things, a disruption to Syvari's atmospheric system, food that arrived at incorrect chemical compositions, harmless to humans but nauseating to Velhari biology, a translation error, deliberate, Marcus was certain, that caused her to appear to insult the delegation from 3 powerful nations simultaneously, very nearly destroying the diplomatic goodwill she had spent weeks carefully building. Then, on the 19th day, it became something worse. Marcus was reviewing the security footage from the corridor outside her suite. Something he had started doing out of habit, because the instinct that had kept him alive, through 4 years of high-pressure diplomatic postings, had begun whispering to him in the middle of the night. When he saw it, 2 figures in maintenance uniforms, a canister being attached to the air filtration unit feeding her rooms, a timer. He didn't stop to report it. He didn't call his supervisor or convene a meeting or draft a memo. He ran. He hit the emergency override on her suite door with his staff badge, burst through it, grabbed Syvari by one luminous blue arm. She turned to look at him with those silver mirror eyes, completely calm, as though she had been expecting this, and pulled her out into the hallway, and away from the unit as fast as his legs would carry both of them. The canister released 40 seconds later. The substance inside was not lethal to humans. To Velhari biology, it was. In the chaos that followed, alarms, lockdowns, emergency personnel flooding the complex, Marcus sat with Syvari in a secure anteroom, and watched her breathe slowly, steadily, her pendant pulsing its quiet rhythm, and he thought about how close it had been. "You knew," he said finally. "I suspected," she said. "There are those in your world who fear what my report might say. If I do not return to the conclave, the Stillness Protocol proceeds automatically. Some would prefer that outcome. Why? Because they believe a quarantine benefits them. No outside observation, no accountability to a wider community." She tilted her great silver eyes toward him. "They would rather your world remain small and closed than risk becoming part of something larger." Marcus was quiet for a long time. "What does your report say? What are you going to tell them?" Syvari was quiet too. When she spoke, it was slowly, as though choosing each word like a stone to place in a careful structure. "I have seen fear in your people, greed, cruelty, the capacity for extraordinary violence." She paused. "I have also seen you, running down a hallway, unarmed, with no authority to act and no guarantee of survival, to pull a stranger to safety." She looked at him with those unreadable eyes. "I have been watching humans for 19 days. You are the first one who moved before you thought." With 11 days remaining, Syvari submitted her report to the Velhari continuance ahead of schedule. It was a document that took 3 hours to transmit, and covered 14,000 years of human history, condensed through the lens of 19 days of direct observation. Marcus never read it. He was never going to read it. But Syvari told him, the evening before she was to leave, standing again on the same balcony where they had watched the sunset weeks before, what her central conclusion had been. "I told them that you are contradictions," she said, "that you build and you burn, that you hate and you love with equal ferocity, that you are terrified of what you do not understand, and yet you run toward it anyway. I told them that no civilization in our records has ever been this beautifully, dangerously unresolved." "That sounds like an argument for the quarantine," Marcus said. "It would be," she agreed, "if I had stopped there. But I also told them this." She turned to face him fully, and in the amber light of early evening, the blue of her skin seemed to glow from within. I told them about a man who had no power and no plan, who saw something wrong and simply moved, who did not wait for permission or protocol, who acted from the most basic moral reflex, that a living being in danger deserves help, regardless of what they look like or where they come from. She reached up and touched the crystal pendant at her throat. It pulsed once, brighter than Marcus had ever seen it. That reflex, she said, is not nothing. It is not common in the galaxy. You would be surprised how rare it is, among civilizations much older and more sophisticated than yours, to find a species that still acts from instinct toward kindness. Most of them have engineered it out, decided it was inefficient. She let the pendant fall. I told the conclave that a world capable of choosing such reflex is a world worth waiting for. Marcus didn't know what to say. He said the only thing that felt honest. We're going to disappoint you. We do it to each other constantly. Yes, Syvari said, but you also surprise each other. That is rarer than you know. The Velhari ship left on a Tuesday morning, rising without sound into a sky that had turned the particular shade of pale gold that Marcus would, for the rest of his life, associate with her. The conclave's decision came 6 weeks later, transmitted through a frequency that no human technology had been able to detect until Syvari had quietly, in her final hours at the complex, adjusted one of the antenna arrays, in a way that no one understood but everyone agreed to leave alone. The stillness protocol was suspended. Indefinitely. It was not a welcome. It was not an alliance. It was simply a door left open, and a world left to decide, slowly, imperfectly, in the contradictory and combustible way of all human decisions, what it might want to walk through. Marcus was promoted eventually. He was assigned to a newly created division, with no official name and a very small budget, tasked with maintaining the antenna array and monitoring the frequency Syvari had left behind. Some days nothing came through. Some days there were signals that the best linguists on Earth were still working to decode. He spent most of his time listening. He was, as Syvari had once observed, very good at that. And somewhere beyond the edge of the solar system, in the silver ship that had come without warning, and left without fanfare, a princess filed her final notes, and watched a pale blue dot grow smaller in the viewport, and thought about how the most important things in the universe almost always happened quietly. In a corridor, in a moment of decision, when no one was watching, and there was no reward for doing right, except the doing of it. She thought that was something worth protecting. She thought, for the first time in a long time, that the galaxy might agree.